Welcome to the first full-length episode for SWOLE is the Goal with me, Tony Clare. Self-discipline is when your conscience tells you to do something and you don't talk back. You need self-control in and out of your mind and your body. If you learn self-control, you can master anything. Never let your emotions overpower your intelligence. These are a couple quotes about today's topic, self-control. What does that mean? Well, I'll give you a few examples. Self-control is, along with sacrifice, a more concrete form of discipline. It's discipline played out in a real-world scenario. If you want to do something and you know it's going to make you worse, you decide not to do it because you know it's a mistake. Self-control can lead, a lack of self-control can lead to you falling into habits that you don't want to fall into that'll bring you further from your goal. But having self-control keeps you on that path. And here today to talk about self-control with me is our guest, Larson Patete. Larson, thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure to be here. I've been a big fan of the podcast ever since mini-episode 1 about discipline.
Awesome.
I would love to continue that discussion.
Awesome. Well, tell us about yourself, Larson. Tell the audience who you are.
I don't know how much there is to it, but I guess the most important thing is I'm a state qualifier for wrestling at the 145 weight class, as well as I'm in a lot of academic programs such as UIL programming and NHS, robotics, etc.
Awesome. That is awesome. So, self-control, discipline, sacrifices, what does that mean to you? Let's break into this. Pretty open-ended question, but
it is pretty open-ended. I think self-control is something that I've always kind of really valued in my life, and I think it's something that I've always really practiced in my life. Because, so I grew up in a Christian household, right? And so I was always told not to do anything, but it's like, that doesn't just mean not do it, you know? Because you're always tempted to do things. And so going from like a Christian private school where nothing happens right into a public high school where there's 2,000 kids and everyone's falling into bad habits, it can be really easy to lose yourself. So I think self-control is something I've always really valued in my life to keep me going straight.
Right. I can agree with that. Yeah, especially from that drastic change from a private school to a public school in terms of everything that's going on around you and everyone on obvious different paths. And what are some things that have helped you stay and keep self-control as you are tempted into certain habits?
I've always been really interested in that question because, to be honest, like I have like the basic answers. You have like what you think it is, but to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure because it's kind of one of those things where it's like I feel like you can work on it obviously, but some people just don't have it.
Right.
And I've always like wondered like why me specifically would have better self-control than say another person. I've always wrestled with that, but I feel like the basic answer would be, first of all, just basic intuition, good parents.
Right, yeah.
Parents coming on a good track. I've really like reached for, this is a religious podcast, right?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I thought so, but I just didn't know how much.
No, yeah, you're good.
I've always looked towards God, right? And put my self-control towards there, and I feel like those are kind of the basic answers. But another note, it's something that's, I don't want to say come naturally to me. It's definitely a mindset thing. It's not that I don't have to like struggle with things, but more in the sense of like I know I can deal with things. Like I know I can be tempted and then not do them. So it's like that feeling of being able to do that self-control. I don't understand where that inherently comes from because I've always wondered what makes like someone have more self-control than another person.
Right.
Which is a little more philosophical.
No, that's
philosophical.
Yeah.
But
that's a really good point. What makes someone able to handle things that other people aren't able to handle? That's something that I don't really think has a direct answer to. And the more you dig into it, the more you find yourself puzzled, I feel like. It's interesting to look at people like you and me who have pretty good self-control, I'd say, being able to stay on our grind and stay on our straight and narrow path. But for some other people, it's not like that. As soon as they encounter some sort of adversity or encounter any sort of temptation, they immediately fall into it. And the question that we're trying to answer is, why does that happen to some people and not to other people?
I think there's a lot of variables involved.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest can be who you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's, again, a basic answer. But I think people have these answers for reasons.
Right.
Because people have studied this, and these are kind of the reasons that people fall victim to this. And peer pressure, I don't think it's as serious as people make it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I think watching your friends do certain things can kind of be like a form of peer pressure.
Right.
I think when people think peer pressure, they think someone's like has drugs in their hand and they're like, try this. Like, you want to try this.
Right.
I don't think that's true. I've never really had someone like pressure me into trying to like fall off my path or stray me away. I think it's more in a sense of you kind of see the people around you doing these things and you kind of see them enjoying it and not like being punished for it. Because a lot of people I know are doing these things and they aren't try and justify it or rationalize it by saying, oh, like nothing wrong is happening to me. Like it's just like a little bit, like it's fun. And I think it's just like seeing people around your life do it and getting away with it can be really big to like influence you to do that as well.
Right. Yeah, I definitely would agree that your habits and behaviors are affected by the group that you surround yourself with. And that's why recently I began kind of narrowing my circle with people who I can like open up to and trust, because in reality, a lot of people are going to fall into those habits, and then eventually it's a domino effect. Like, you'll eventually see other people that you thought you knew fall into those habits, and then it could lead to you. And I feel like the easiest way, well, not really the easiest way because it's going to be hard, but cutting off those people in one way or another to where you're not being influenced by them anymore. And that's one of the hardest things to do, because they could be people you've known for a long time. They could be people that you've had friendships with or relationships with, and that can always be hard. But at the end of the day, you need to realize what's causing the problems and what is, how you can fix them.
I think two things I want to say. First of all, I knew someone who was a past preacher who'd always say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Mm-hmm. So there you go. There's a little quote for you.
Yeah. There you go.
I think Ryan Shoemaker
is
someone who said that. I'm not exactly sure. The other thing I'll say is I think one thing that I would personally struggle with in that scenario is I kind of like, I understand that I won't fall for those things. Like, I have a very strong willpower. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, it's kind of like the opposite effect. It's like instead of trying to cut them off, I'm like, okay, what if I try and help them? What if I try and be like a guiding light? It's like, hey, look, like I'm not doing any of these things and I'm doing perfectly fine. Right. I think that's where I kind of differentiate. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because it's really easy to kind of get lost in that and kind of like, it's more of like an excuse than like I don't know. Like, I feel like that's something I could do is like try and rationalize, because like I don't want to cut certain people off, even though they aren't good influences. I'm like, oh, well, I'm just helping them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, honestly, I don't exactly understand the influence I have. I think there's the ways I'm definitely helping, but I think it's definitely could be an excuse to just want to hang out with those people.
Yeah. Yeah, because on one end of peer pressure, we have those things we're talking about, people getting into those bad habits, but then there's the positive side of peer pressure, to where they can see you doing things that they know are making you better, and then they can fall into those areas or habits. And I think that's not talked about nearly enough, how surrounding yourself with good people has a good effect on the environment that you're in. For example, a sports team. Mm-hmm. If you have bad leadership, if you have people that aren't setting an example for those younger ones, then they're just going to fall into the same losing mindset that's been around for however long it's been going on, But if you have those people that are willing to take a step forward and lead and like put confidence in that team, then you can start to see a whole mindset shift just from one or two people. And that also has that same domino effect.
That's definitely a good example, because I think seniors have a really big influence on the freshmen.
Definitely.
I don't know how many of them kind of realize that, but like when personally I was a freshman, I still do the things that my senior did. Mm-hmm. Like, he did that, I want to do that. Like, I kind of like, I look up to that guy and I want to be like him. And it's like if someone was doing something bad depending on the senior, because some of them just don't care. Some of them will be like, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
And it's like having that person who's like, oh, like having that influential person in your life can be really huge. And so I think a sports team is great for that, because those kind of like, especially in high school, you get really close to those people and it become like a family. And so it's like those are kind of people that would see you making those mistakes and correcting them. And having it, I mean, and some of that is just kind of luck. You can't really choose who's on your team all the time, but that's definitely one of those scenarios. It's like, well, and if you don't have those people, you need to be that person.
Exactly.
You need to be the person telling other people not to do certain things.
Yeah, because it can be hard sometimes trying to correct people when they are all disagreeing in what you're saying, to where people are just like there to mess around and go through the motions. They're like, no, we need to get in check and we need to get this done, and they'll just kind of laugh it off. But when you have a group of people that can keep all of them in check and have a strong voice, then that, I feel like, has loads more effect on an entire program. Because if there's just one person, I mean, don't get me wrong, one person can make a huge difference, but it takes a lot more work. You need a culture of people, and oftentimes that starts with one person and it carries on. Like I said, I bring up domino effect a lot, but when you look at it that way, it kind of makes sense, because if you have a group of people that are all in a losing mindset, it only takes one to change that.
I totally agree with that, I think. And then it's like I said, it kind of carries down. Like, you kind of do the things that you were taught when you first get into that program, and then when new kids come up, you will teach them those things. And it kind of gets passed down like a tradition. And if you have someone change it for the better, then it can really change the whole program.
Yeah. That's where the self-control comes in, being able to step away from what everyone else is doing, even though it seems more fun or seems, I don't even know, but you know what I'm saying. If you are having that self-control to not fall into what everyone else is falling into, then that makes a difference, and people can see that difference. I feel like one person standing out from a group makes a lot louder impression, even for coaches or stuff like that, to where the difference made with those people can be a lot more drastic. Changing gears here a little. Another topic I wanted to bring up was fear. And I'm not just talking about being afraid. I feel like there's two sides of fear. There's the fear to try and the fear to fail. And a lot of people talk about fear to fail, and they think, oh, I'm not going to try this because I'm afraid to fail. I think I consider that the fear to try, because the fear to fail, I feel, can be a very strong fear, a very motivating, dare I say, fear, to where if you want something so bad that you're afraid to not get it and that you will do anything to get it, I feel like that can have a huge impact. What does fear mean to you, Larson?
I think fear can be broken down to a lot of categories. Like you said, fear to try, fear to fail, was it? I think fear to try, I've seen a lot of people kind of like fall victim to that. And it kind of like, it's like I said, it gets broken down to a lot of different ways. There's the fear because they don't want someone to see them and like be like, oh, like see them like fail at something, like because they tried something new. Like I know certain people who won't try new hobbies or new things in front of people because they don't want other people to think that they're bad at a certain thing. And then there's and that's kind of like a social like fear to try. And there's like the personal fear to try.
Yes.
In the sense of like, oh, I don't want to personally let myself down or personally fail this because then I'll be mad at myself. So I think that can be broken down into two different ways.
Nice. Have you experienced any sort of fear in wrestling? I mean, obviously that's a very, I feel like, fear factor-ish sport to where it's just you and one other person and you're both giving everything you have to achieve what you're trying to achieve. How does fear play into that?
That's an interesting question. Fear playing into wrestling. I think before every match, you're always nervous.
Right. Nerves are a big part of that, obviously.
And you definitely get over them the more you wrestle. Like, I wouldn't say I'm as nervous. I think it probably depends on the match and the circumstances. But once you kind of set on that match, all that fear kind of goes away. But I think, in a sense, if you could kind of think, I don't know, it's really interesting when you kind of, I mean, you could dive down into the wrestling aspect of it and kind of like the fear to try certain moves or the risk to go to for certain things, which could be like, oh, like, should I go for this move? Should I try this? Should I try that? And you can kind of get in your own head about it. Because I know some people who are just like, they're very not confident in themselves.
Right.
And so they're better than they think they are, but they're kind of scared to do certain things because they believe that they're just going to get punished for it. Because it's one of those sports where it's like if you do one wrong move, the entire match is over.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of things people are very scared to go through it for. And there's good reason for that because it's true. You can just lose the entire match. But I think it can definitely be like if you have confidence in certain moves you do and you're not kind of as scared to fail, then it can definitely help you win matches.
Right. Yeah. People who are terrified to lose, not in the sense of, oh, I don't want to try this because I might lose. It's the people who want to do it and they don't want to lose. They're terrified of the fact of losing. Those people can be dangerous when it comes to their sport. Like, I've read, you're familiar with Tim Tebow, right? I read in one of his books. It was, I think it was called Shaken.
I didn't know he wrote books.
He did. He has a few. And he would talk about his fear of failure a lot, to where he was obviously an NFL quarterback for a short amount of time, but his main accomplishments were made when he was in college at University of Florida. And he would talk about he was so terrified of losing that he would want to do things that he knew no one else were doing. So he would wake up at around 2 a.m. and just start doing blood-boiling workouts because he knew no one else wants to do this, so I'm going to do that. And that's another part of it, doing things that you know other people don't want to do. And there's a quote that brings me back to this. It says, I will do today what others won't, so I can do tomorrow what others can't. And that's another, like I said, another big part of it. Because if you're willing to do something that no one else wants to do, you'll be able to do something that no one else will be able to do. And so that brings me a little bit of comfort, a little bit of peace. Like when I do early morning workouts and waking up at like 5:30 to go do stuff, that I feel like just on the drive to the workout, I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like no one's out yet and everyone's still asleep. My competition is still asleep and I'm getting to work. I'm getting that one step closer. I'm getting that edge. And another quote mentioning fear and kind of that fear to fail is, someone somewhere is working when I am not, and when we meet, they will win. And actually I have a sticky note in my bathroom that says that. So every time I walk in there and I see that, I know someone out there is working when I'm being lazy, and when I meet, they will win. And so that's just a little way to keep me in check. I have to sometimes remind myself that there's always that person out there that's stronger and faster, but I have to make the steps to start getting closer to that.
So do you see fear to fail as a good motivating thing?
I would think so. In some cases. See, fear to fail, because people who are afraid to try obviously are afraid to fail, but that's not the good kind. But to where you're afraid to fail, to where you'll do anything to combat that, I feel like that is a good motivator.
But then what happens when you do fail? How do you deal with that emotion of like, oh, I tried so hard, I woke up early and I still didn't succeed? How do you personally deal with that?
Personally, like let's put it in, so I do CrossFit, as y'all should know. I did a competition a ways back.
There's CrossFit competitions?
Oh, dude, there's tons of CrossFit competitions. Have you heard of the CrossFit Games?
No, I've not.
So I'll come back to that. But anyway, I was doing a CrossFit competition at a local CrossFit gym. The competition was called Barcode, and I'd been doing CrossFit for a couple years at that time, and I felt like I was getting pretty good at it. And then I showed up to this competition, and I think I placed there was I think probably 25 teams there. It was teams of 2, and I think I had placed like 4th to last. So that was kind of humbling. And when I go back and look at those cases to where I feel like I trained so hard and I still failed, I realized I wasn't going hard enough. I could have done something better, whether it be sleep, recovery, nutrition, training schedule, like going back to kind of the CrossFit Games here, like I was talking about. So every year there's something called the CrossFit Open, and I feel like I think it's like 400,000 people try to. So basically, the CrossFit organizations send out workouts, and then people who try to go far in this will record themselves working out and submit their time or their score. And there's 4 weeks, and the top 10,000 of those 400,000 move on to the semifinal or the quarterfinals, and then after the quarterfinals, the top top 500 or something like that move on to the semifinals, and after that, the top 40 fittest men, 40 fittest women on earth go to compete in the CrossFit Games, and that is a 4-day competition with, I believe, like 4 workouts each day, and at the end they crown the fittest man and fittest woman on earth. And so there's this man in the CrossFit world, his name is Matt Frazier. He was the fittest man on earth for 5 years in a row, but before that he had lost twice. And he's talked about how in those times, his first year he lost, it was to a man named Rich Froning, who is like the 4-year champion. He was favored by a lot, but Matt Frazier still came in second. And so after that, Rich Froning had retired, and Matt Frazier and just kind of figured that he'd win it that year because, the guy in front of me retired, so now I'm next in line. And so he kind of overlooked the rest of the competition, and he actually lost that year again. And now when he looks back on that, he talks about how even though he was in the gym training as hard as he possibly could, everything outside of that was not where it needed to be. His sleep schedule was off. He was going to sleep at 1 a.m. and waking up at 7. And even though that was like still 6 hours of sleep, he realized that stuff like that matters. He started taking his recovery more seriously. He started taking his nutrition way more seriously. And then the next 5 years, he won by the biggest margins of victory that anyone had ever won. So when you look back and think, I trained so hard for something and I still came up short, look at all the other aspects. Look at your sleep. If you're competing and you're getting 6-7 hours of sleep each night, then that's a problem. You're not going to see the best results that you can produce. If you're getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep before a game or a competition or a meet or whatever it is that you're doing, then you can start to unleash your full potential. It's just trying to hammer closer and closer to tapping that potential, I feel like. And so then look at the other aspects, your nutrition, your recovery. What are you doing after workout? Are you stretching? Are you rolling out? Are you taking ice baths? Are you doing stuff to make sure that your muscles are ready to go? And that for me, that's what I have to look at and take into account after I fail at something.
Interesting. Oh, gosh, I had a question. I was going to say, do you think failure is a bad thing, or do you think it's just a motivating thing?
Well, you win. Here's another quote I've heard. I have a lot of quotes. You win or you learn. Winning is obviously, you did it, great. But if you don't win, you learn. If you learn from it, I don't consider it a failure. Failure is quitting. Failure is giving up. Because if you learned from it, then you can come back and use what you learned to help you maybe win the next time. How do you feel about that? What does that mean to you? Do you see failure as a bad thing? Because obviously failure isn't fun. Losing isn't fun.
Failure is I think in wrestling, one of the hardest things to deal with. Because it's kind of one of those sports
because it's all on you.
It's all on you.
You can't put
There's
anything.
no excuse you can make.
Right.
And it's you could say that about football too.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that it doesn't fall on you, but there are cases where you can genuinely say
that was my bad. Yeah.
And there's also cases where you can blame it on your team.
Right.
If
mm-hmm.
It's why did they do that? That was we lost because they played like this, they played like that. There's a lot of other variables you can kind of put into that. But wrestling, it's a one-on-one mental match. I think one thing that I've always been told, my dad always told me this, and it took me a while to really understand this, but wrestling is 90% mental.
Wow.
And 10%, everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really understood that for a while. And I think the past few years I've been in high school and competing with, some of the best in the state, I've kind of understood what that's kind of like. And so it's if you got to put 110% of your mind to win every single match, it's all right. Another thing I heard from another person, it's kind of like when you're running right? And you've been running for a while and you get really tired. Which stops first, your body or your mind?
Your mind.
Your mind, right? Like, because when you're running and your body's moving, but your mind's telling you to stop, and your body's still moving. That treadmill's still going. Your feet are still moving. It's your mind telling you that you need to stop. And so I think a lot of people, they kind of don't understand like how to overcome that. They don't think they can overcome that because they think it's their body, like, oh, I'm dead right now. It's like, no, you got more to go. You just don't think you can. And it's like wrestling can really be like that. Wrestling, it's like, and so kind of figuring that can give you a huge edge. And I think one thing that I've always been prideful of is I've never quit a match. So, and my coach even told me this. So we have some, I'm not calling anyone out, but we have wrestlers who, if they're down and it's the last minute, they'll give up. And it makes it, I hate watching it because it's like, you can win, you can do this, but it's so mental, and it's like, they quit. But I never quit. And so this whole lead up is like, is to say that when you lose in wrestling, it is very painful because you put 110% of your mind in and you don't give up to the very end just to not even succeed. It can be really tough. It can also be, there's a lot of different things that can go into a loss. So I think CrossFit, or like, I think it's interesting how you said, like, there's more than just training. Like, there's sleeping, which is very true. But I think in wrestling, there's a whole other aspect, which is intelligence. So you can outsmart a wrestler, right? And I went.
You can't really outsmart a barbell.
Yeah, that's a whole other aspect that's kind of, I think, interesting that goes into wrestling, because you can do a lot of training. But when I went to state, one thing that I found really interesting is how close the level of competition is. And there are definitely the anomalies who just go and wipe everyone. But if we were to re-wrestle everyone at state, the outcomes would be entirely different. And I remember watching some matches, and it really stuck out to me because it'd be a tied match in the last period. And it's like, what, you have a decision of going top, bottom, or neutral. And I mean, you wrestled, so you understand.
Yeah.
Like, I watched one of the best kids in our region, who I loved watching at regionals, wrestle at state. He was in the semifinals, and it was 2-2. So he got a 2 in the first period. He got a 2 from takedown, and then, I think the kid got a reversal. And then the kid chose top, second period, and he rode him out the entire 2 minutes. So the kid knew he could get a takedown, but he also got ridden out for like 2.5 minutes. So there was like pretty much no chance he was getting out. But for some reason, he chose bottom. And it's like, if you would have chose neutral and gotten that takedown, it would have been up 4-2. And let's say, worst case, the kid gets a reversal. Okay, then it's 4-4, go to overtime. Both start neutral, you get a takedown, you win. But he didn't. He chose down and got ridden out the entire 2-minute period and lost the match. And I think it's like, wrestling could really have a lot of like intelligence in it, because like if he chose top, which would have been the smarter move to play, he would have whatever. So I guess it's like another factor to kind of think about it. It's like, it's not just like outside things. It's more, there's a lot of like game sense, I guess you could say, that goes into it.
Right.
So it could definitely be a hard sport to train for, but because it's not just about being strong. It's not just about being fast or having endurance. It's about having a mindset and being a smart wrestler and kind of understanding your opponent and timings and how to combat that. But
how do you kind of balance that, the physical aspect and the mental aspect? Like, obviously, there's the weight room, there's the track, there's running, but how do you feel like, what's the best way for you to improve your intelligence side of wrestling? Just experience, or does it just come naturally, or do you feel like
one of the best things to do is watch wrestling?
Watch it. Okay.
Watching and experience. I mean, experience is obviously it's the best answer you could choose, because it's definitely going to increase that. But on like another level of kind of like, really, if you want to be the best, you kind of have to like live that sport,
right?
Live and breathe that sport. And it's like, if you're watching everyone around you and seeing how they're reacting to certain moves, it could definitely help you be a smart wrestler. Also, watching your competition. So a lot of times you can kind of, depending on when and where your match is, you can kind of see who you're wrestling and their certain style and their reactions and certain moves they do, and kind of understanding, oh, how can I counter that? And so I think one of the huge things in wrestling, and I think any one-on-one sport, is kind of like shadow, like, you know, or like shadow boxing.
Yeah.
It's similar to that. And you don't have to necessarily play it out in real life, which you can. We have done that, and I'll do that. I think one of the main things you could do is play it out in your mind. So before every match, I visualize my opponent, and I visualize the moves I'm going to be doing on them, and I visualize their reactions, so that when in the match, I'm ready for it.
Right.
So I'll see them in my head, and I'll see them doing certain moves, the moves that they've done, and I've watched them do, and the moves that I feel comfortable doing, and I'll kind of play out like an entire match in my head. I think it's a really good exercise. Another thing is, so my dad wrestled in college, and so I'd say he's my like number one coach, because obviously I have a coach, but
right.
he never wrestled. So he's my main coach, and sometimes I remember there was one time, I think it was like before regionals, the week before regionals, we were in the mat room and we were running sprints. And as I was running, he was kind of playing out a match in my head. He's like, all right, third period, you go for a takedown, you miss, and blah, blah, blah. And like kind of like getting you prepared for the match. I think it's like if instead of just going for like instead of just sprinting, like while you're sprinting, imagining a match. Like even out, like before even, I think. Like imagining like the opponent you're going to wrestle, that you know you're going to wrestle, because he specifically had someone in mind that I've previously wrestled. And I was 1-1 against this kid. And it was like, all right, this is what's going to happen. You know he's going to do this. You know he's going to do that. This is how you can react. Kind of playing that out through my mind as I'm sprinting to kind of motivate you and push you further and also get your mind in that mindset. I think that's a great thing to do. I don't know how much that translates into everything else, but I think any one-on-one sport, it's definitely a...
No, yeah, I definitely feel like we do that kind of in football too before a game, because obviously we watch film. We know the plays and the tendencies other teams kind of stick to. And so, for instance, me playing at linebacker, I'm kind of like before a game, whenever I'm warming up, I'll kind of, picture myself in front of the other team's offensive line.
You're looking for something, don't you?
It's okay. I can cut that out. But anyway, whenever I'm in front of another team's offensive line, it's easy to, well, it's not really easy to, but I will, in my warm-ups, I will imagine what that guard is doing. Because for me, it all depends on what that guard on my side does. I'm picturing him down blocking and then me filling the hole. I'm picturing him pulling and then me scraping over. I'm picturing him zoning and me ripping over the top. It's all about that kind of, fast reaction time and being prepared for that in your mind, so if they do this, then I'm going to do that. And I feel like, that can apply to, I'm not really sure how that can apply to like the real world, but let's say,
I mean, I guess there's a lot of things that can apply to it, really.
Right.
Like if you think of like a job interview.
Yeah.
Like what are they going to ask me?
Yeah, just preparing for
or like a
certain
podcast,
questions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
Same for, and this is definitely a less like healthier thing, but I definitely do, is like if you're going to have like a deep conversation with someone, or you're going to open up about something, or like admit something to someone, it's like kind of preparing yourself for all the little reactions they're going to do.
Yeah.
That's more, emotional.
Mm-hmm. Not so much visualizing, but going through what could happen and then preparing for your response.
I guess sometimes it could be visualization. Depends on like
the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, another point that you made, the body going past the mind's limit. I feel like I remember a coach telling me that back when I was in like middle school or something. We were doing conditioning and everyone's groaning in pain because, oh no, they're making us run. And then, I distinctly remember a certain coach telling me, the body can do amazing things. The mind is going to tell you it can't. The mind is what's telling you, oh, it's uncomfortable, so let's stop. But the body can keep going past that. And that's realizing that and embracing that and keep going with that, I feel like is the hardest part, because people will stop as soon as they reach that first little gut check of pain that comes. And honestly, that's where self-control ties back in. Realizing that
this has all been a huge
realizing that you can do something, and that even though it is extremely uncomfortable in the moment, that it's temporary. And I feel like for me, that's been one of the biggest driving factors in CrossFit, because some of these workout, not just CrossFit, but also football and conditioning and everything else like that, and even other stuff like homework and studying, because at points it's gonna suck, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna feel terrible, I don't like this, and your mind is giving you every excuse to stop. And one thing I just keep repeating in my head over and over and over again is that this is temporary. It's going to end. I'm going to feel fine in an hour. It's going to hurt right now, but today's suffering will be tomorrow's upper hand. Today's suffering is going to make me a little bit better than the rest of the people tomorrow. And that's what keeps me going, because I know that in the middle of a workout, whenever my mind is telling me, oh, this hurts, you should quit, you just got to keep on trucking. And that's what's helped me.
Hey, I know I've heard like a little, like, I don't know what it's considered, but it was basically the idea that like you kind of split up pain into different categories. It's like, is this going to affect me just for now? Like, how am I going to feel affected by this now? How am I going to feel affected by this an hour, a day from now, a week from now, like a month from now?
Right.
And kind of base it on, it's like, it kind of goes in that temporary thing. It's like, if this is only going to affect me now, then it's only affecting you now. And so,
yeah. Yeah, that's the hardest part to realize. And oftentimes I'll tell myself that before it even starts, because in the middle of a workout, I'm not thinking about how the pain is going to be feeling in a couple days. I'm just thinking about, oh, this hurts right now really bad. But I tell myself before, just make a little mental note that this is going to be really good in a couple days. Like in a couple days, I know I'm going to be sore tomorrow, I'm going to be sore the next day, but after that, I'll be a little bit stronger than I was before that. And there's this pretty famous CrossFit workout. You may have heard of it. Have you heard of Murph?
I have not.
So,
I don't really know much about the CrossFit.
right.
world.
Yeah. This isn't really too much of a CrossFit workout. It's a Memorial Day workout. It's done in every CrossFit gym around the globe on Memorial Day. It's called Murph because it honors a Navy SEAL who died in combat. His name was Michael Murphy. Have you seen the movie Lone Survivor?
I've not.
Okay, well, anyway.
Sorry,
They died on a mission in Afghanistan, and this workout is to kind of honor all those soldiers who've died on Memorial Day. And what it is a 1 mile run, then 100 push-ups,
yes.
100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then another mile, all with a 20-pound weight vest.
I have heard of this.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Have you done it?
Yeah, I've done it the past 2 years.
20-pound weight vest?
20-pound weight vest. Yeah,
That's insane.
yeah, and
100 push-ups?
no, 200 push-ups,
200 push-ups?
100
Oh.
pull-ups.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a spicy one. But yeah, when I'm in the middle of it, especially that second run when I feel like I can barely walk, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, this is terrible. But then I also think about, this is nothing compared to what those people went through. And in a couple of days, in a couple of hours, I'll be completely fine. I'll be relaxing at my house. And so, just having that self-control to manage myself to keep going. And I feel like that took a lot of time for me to have that kind of ability to push through pain and get comfortable with pain. Not really comfortable, but being able to manage it. Because obviously when I first started, I thought, this is kind of stupid. Like, this hurts so bad. And it's like, I can't do this. And so my mind would convince my body of that, and then I would stop. And over time, I feel like, there was probably one day to where I decided, I don't care how bad it hurts, I'm just going to go through it. And then I realized, oh, wait, I feel fine 10 minutes after it's over. I catch my breath and I'm good to go. And that's when I kind of, it kind of clicked that even though it hurts in the moment, I'm able to make it through that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very true. It does. I think when you think of that kind of self-control, it's definitely something that you can build up. I think that's something that doesn't as much come naturally. I think you definitely have a natural sense of that. You can definitely be taught that as well. And that kind of goes with like a good leader, kind of pushing you through that. But that is definitely something you have to work with, but it's all mental. And that is a very huge mentality.
Yes.
And I think one of the interesting things you said is kind of saying like, this other person was going through it worse. I think I've personally done that. Even not so much with like like seeing how like other people have gone through, more of like what I've gone through.
Mhm.
You know, it's like I've gone through I've gone through things that are worse. This is so like insignificant to my life. And I think that was a very big emotional part of my life, which is what I'm specifically referring to. Is I went through something really huge emotional. I was like, that emotional pain hurt more than this,
Mhm.
and that would kind of drive me in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty powerful thought to have is, oh, I've gone through way worse than this. I can keep going. And for a lot of times, I feel like that's a problem with other people who haven't felt that pain yet, is that's what can kind of stop them, is they're not used to that territory. And I'm sure there will be times later on in my life to where I go through pain that I've never felt before. And after I get through that, after I'm over that hump, then I can be, oh, well, I went through that, so I should be able to handle anything now until I get the next one. And then I just realized that, you can keep going. And that's the biggest point I can bring to you, audience. No matter how bad it hurts in the moment, no matter how bad you think it's going to hurt, you can get through it. Don't let your mind convince you otherwise, because at the end of it, you'll feel fine and you'll be better from it. And that's the biggest message I can give.
Yeah, and I mean that can build self-control to other parts of your life.
Definitely.
Because I think at first we kind of talked more of that societal thing, and this is kind of more of the physical side of it, of kind of and mental side of keeping yourself things. But it's like if you can keep that discipline, keeping your body moving, then you can keep your mind moving. It's like
exactly.
It's all mental, and that's why I think I'm so confused about it, because it's like, yeah, you can train yourself and your body and your mind, but it's like you have to want to.
Yes.
I think it's that desire that really is the difference between someone else.
Right.
Because obviously, like, I think the reason I have better self-control is because I want to, you know?
Yeah.
I want to get better. I want to be, like I want to strive and do better, and I want to push myself. Not that I, like, mentally am just, like, better than everyone else.
Right,
know?
yeah.
But it's like, it's that desire that I think differentiates a person from another person.
Yep.
I think that's where I'm kind of confused, like, where does that kind of instinctually come from?
Yeah. And I feel like there's two sides of that too, like people who want something and people who are willing to do something about it. Like you can want something all you want and then hope it comes to you, but then there's those people who, like you said, strive to be better and strive to get get towards that goal. And, those are the people that ultimately will end up getting it. The people who are willing to sacrifice to get it, the people who are willing to have that self-control, the people who fear failure, those are the ones that will come out on top.
But also learn from failure.
Learn from failure. Yes, you can fear it and learn from it. Because, like I said, you win or you learn. And trust me, there's going to be a lot of learning along the way before you end up successful.
I don't think there's ever a time when you don't learn.
No, there always is.
And when you're at the top, that's when you need to learn most.
Yeah.
Because everyone's eyes on, and not that we really experience this.
Yeah.
But
one day.
I'm ranked in state. I got some eyes on me. But
yeah.
Everyone's eyes are on you. Everyone's waiting for you to fail. And they are trying their best to overtake you. That's when you really need to try the best. So there's never really a time where you can kind of coast.
That's true. That's
like you always have to be pushing yourself. You always have to be bettering yourself.
Always.
I think it's like I said, like I said earlier, wrestling is 90% mental. I think that can be said about pretty much everything. Like I said, your body will keep moving. Right?
Yeah,
so
you'll
it's
keep going.
Push yourself, right?
You just need to want it, and you need to go and get it. And that's what is up.
But it can't just be, it's not just something you learn overnight, And it's not something you can just fix or do. So it's one of those things you have to work for, and it's one of the things you have to want.
Yes.
But it's literally, like I said, it's all mental.
Yep. And that doesn't come, like you said, doesn't come easily. It doesn't come in a day. You can't just decide, oh, I'm going to do this one night, and then it's going to happen. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take hard work and consistency.
And self-control.
Well, if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. You can add us on Snapchat. And we will see y'all in the next one. Larson, thank you very much for coming on.
I enjoyed my time.
And remember, SWOLE is the goal.
And size is the prize.
Go get some.